Hello everybody, it is the me again, Penguin21, and today, well, looks like we are starting to talk about Stellar Blade again, with the Stellar Blade PC port announcement being a thing that has happened in a bit. What the hell even happened with it? Well, obviously, PlayStation fanboys are a bit upsetty spaghetti about this, but one other thing that happened was, more specifically, last week-ish, they decided to then come out with an interesting thing that the director of Shift Up, or the CEO himself, decided to talk about mods and the creations and things thereof. It's quite interesting to me how people still think that things such as modding are digital vandalism and an affront to the arts themselves, when specifically certain people actually like the fact that giving consent to mods to it. And also an interesting thing is that giving consent to modders is actually kind of legally important, as I've discussed in previous videos. If you didn't know, technically speaking, if the mods themselves are not given via mod tools or via a licensing agreement of some kind, it is technically illegal. Not entirely, it's really like a more of a, if they decide to pursue it, then yeah, some of those mods could definitely be taken down for one reason or another. So hence why mods getting taken down and moved off of platforms or moved to different locations has always been a bit of an situation. So yeah. Again, to kind of relate it to a few of like the bigger stories here, things such as the destruction of the mod scene in specifically VR chats in certain cases, the destruction of the mod scene in this case and in that case, it's all just very strange. But we have to go to the official thing here, and one of the official sources here is from Stellar Blade, so at Shift Up World. I'm not sure if this is an official news source or something, or where they got this or pulled this from, so again, take this with a sort of grain of salt, but we saw people commenting about this, so actual people picked up on this. So, Shift Up CEO and Stellar Blade director Jam Third, not sure what that is, but endorses mod creations. In a press conference, he was also asked his stance on mods, and now that Stellar Blade is coming to PC. To which he responded, quote, "First of all, I fully support the phenomenon of players using mods. In fact, I myself also want to try out some of the more exciting mods. Fucking based as fuck, but moving on. I look forward to seeing many players create their own mods and engaging in healthy competition with them to see whose mods are more attractive. I also hope that many players can get involved in mod creation." Again, fucking based as fuck. And saying he's a real one with photos taken at the actual thing. There was photos attached to this, but I couldn't fit them into the screenshot, so just know that it was just the Stellar Blade thing as well as the actual CEO himself talking about this. But overall, that's a fairly good statement, and I do think that it's actually an interesting statement here, saying that they want people to see just how creative and interesting they can take the art of mod creation and mod stuff to make them. Because I think that he, along with a lot of other people that endorse these sorts of modding things, realize that mods themselves can lead to a lot of game creations. Oh, but Penguin, they're just modifying original engines and stuff. Okay? Most games are modifications of original engines. Not every game is written on its own specific fucking engine. Like, a lot of Roblox games are literally just the recreation of specific games in Roblox. Just as a random example. But overall, yeah, I mean, that does seem to be like a thing. And it doesn't seem to be like the worst in the world. I mean, again, who would get angry at that? Well, PlayStation fanboys and a lot of other people seem to get angry at that in the first place. So that being said, let's look at some of the actual responses to this. One of, if not the biggest responses here, was a person by the name of Docs Razor Unplugged, who wrote an entire essay on these things. A couple of different essays, mind you. And he and Liberty Prime here decided to get into a little bit of a spat over this, but we get ahead of ourselves. Of course, let's talk about the actual first response that this actually ended up happening. I think you might have seen Joe from Seattle talk about this, but let's read this thing out. We'll go with a couple paragraphs here. This is going to be unpopular. Endorsing modding of their new release games are developers admitting they made a bad product, or not the one people want, and that it needs free assistance to fix it or make /keep it relevant. First of all, no. utilizing and saying that you should have mod creations in your thing is different than actually doing it. As a sort of marketing guy myself, and someone who actually has seen this sort of things of denouncing mods or accepting mods into the specific communities, there's a difference between knowing what the community wants versus knowing what the actual whole aspect of the moddings is. Now, again, saying that it's like, oh yes, you made a bad product. No, Skyrim in and of itself and a lot of Bethesda games were actually good products at some point. Starfield, not so much, but again, things like Skyrim have been relevant for years, despite the fact that it was released all the way back in 2012. Jesus Christ. Maybe actually 2011. But, it was released a long-ass fucking time ago, nearly a decade. Over a decade. And it is still relevant to this day because of the modding scene. They didn't make it a bad product. The bad product would have fizzled out completely by this point, usually, as we've seen before. Some products don't even last that long. Concord. But the denouncing and the exception of mods in the community isn't good. It isn't the way that you want to do it. Is because it's not only just a marketing thing, but it also, again, it's not just that. As again, mods can lead to games, which games lead to more games that can be available for other people. Again, to use a random example again, PUBG was a mod for Arma, but then became its own game. Next paragraph on this is, it's not some quote, fans love it so they want to make it their own situation. It very much is, because that's what modding is. It's a trend of putting out games that rely on the community to be relevant or even get traction through mods. No, it's not. It's pandering to a small slice of gamers who make a decision to play a game based on the mods it has. No. Once you stop supporting /patching / expanding a title, it should be available for modding. All games should. And I'll give him this. I agree with that last point. That's the only relevant point that I can agree with that he's made that actually is one that is kind of solidly sound here. If you're going to stop supporting and patching and expanding the mod scene, even just stop supporting, not even just stop supporting, but stop adding new content to the game, then yeah, adding up a content filter or a way to make content more readily available to more people, yes, absolutely, I would 100% support that. But overall, the rest of this is garbage. Saying that, oh yes, we made a bad product and that you shouldn't like it. No, if you support mods, that means that you support the fact that people are going to like the base product enough to be creative enough to then sit down and make the mod. It's not just a sense of, oh yeah, we put this out here, we're just going to ship this out, and you can do whatever the fuck you want with it, like in some cases. Because in other cases, it might not be the case. It's more of a confidence thing. Another smaller example that I can use off the top of my head is Operation Horror's Doorstop, which I did review and, in a sense, has had a whole bunch of controversies around it, at least not recently from what I can tell. Seems to have died down a bit. But Operation Horror's Doorstop, which was made by Blue Drake 42's team, or the whole Blue Drake thing, has gone through a couple of controversies. One, it had some stolen asset stuff. I covered that a little bit. But another one is that he beefed with Big Fry for whatever reason. Don't really know fucking why. But the whole big thing here is that it was meant to be kind of a platform to build off of mods and stuff. And while I didn't think that it had a great amount of legs to stand on, there were still enough people supporting it because they liked the whole niche of the tactical shooter genre enough to make mods for it. Again, it's one of those things where, yes, certainly, you can have a bad product and then have support mods and say, oh, we're going to rely on the community for it. But it's another thing to say we have enough confidence that you'll like the game enough that you'll be inspired enough to then create more content for the game. There's a big difference there. I know that there's a lot here to go over, but we're going to just breeze on by a couple of things. A couple of the responses here saying, Liberty Prime Groffer says, it's unpopular because it's wrong, with Drax then coming back with, no, it's unpopular because it makes a very small group of people angry that anyone would disagree with them. No, it's unpopular because that's not how unpopular opinions work. unpopular opinions. Unpopular opinions is that you disagreeing is that the opinion isn't accepted by the masses themselves. And what you say here is saying that this is an unpopular opinion right here is because, well, the thing entirely is different. And like, again, saying that this is unpopular, yes, it means that it's not accepted by the wider stuff here. And looking at the comments, this and a few of the handful of comments here are the unpopular ones. But again, there is another person here who does a much better explanation than I probably ever could do here, where he breaks down each of the individual points here. I'm not going to go over the whole thing here, but you can read through the whole thing. But he basically just decides to say how this person basically used an entire amount of different fallacies here. And we'll just go through each of them. And again, I'll summarize each of these and what he basically says in each of them. But again, just read through the whole thing. Pause the video if you really care. Basically, he starts off with the Umbra Flame. Comes out here with I am impressed. I've never seen someone jam 5 logical fallacies in one single post before. Let's go through it. A hasty generalization. Basically, he's ignoring the reasons why a company may have for supporting modding stuff outside of them, quote unquote, making a bad product, even though that's not true. It's a confidence thing. And there are a number of reasons having interest in supporting him. One big one being a big marketing decision, as I've explained before. Next up here we have the false dichotomy, saying it's similar to this similar to the previous point, but it ignores different reasons from previous point. It suggests that the modding support can only be an attempt to be the quote-unquote fix to it, and not like doing anything else, such as adding extra content, making extra levels, or creating extra things to create a longevity of the game, which has been done before in this. Especially if they release mod tools for Stellar Blade officially, that shit's gonna go fucking insane. Next up here we have a strawman argument, which again, you've probably heard strawman arguments where he basically says he dismisses the ideas of the game studios wanting to encourage player creativity within the community itself. Again, that's what Umbra Flame is basically saying in that one. He then basically is like, oh yeah, they intentionally did this so they could encourage creativity in the actual game itself. And then it's a slippery slope fallacy, saying that implying that mods relying on them to lead a reduction to the game quality, even though, again, they have a solid base foundation for the actual game itself here, despite that whole thing of that. Again, that's the last. And the last one here is an appeal to motive, from what he can see here, from what again, Umbra is explaining here, saying you are questioning or finding an issue and a motive behind the act rather than the actual impact of that action. To criticize the action. Basically, he's kind of taking a grain of sand and calling it a heap of some kind, or it's like using the actual. I guess it's more of like a mountain molehill kind of thing, where it's like, oh yeah, this person like supports this, therefore does it. Or probably to use the Twitter example, person says that they like person A says that they like waffles, but then the person B basically says, so you hate pancakes, you waffle supporter, as that kind of happens there. It's not unpopular. And the last sentence here, which kind of sums up the rest of the thing, is it's not that this is an unpopular opinion. This is an unpopular statement because it's a poorly reasoned. And I agree, it is a poorly reasoned example of what a person can basically talk about this. Because yeah, there's a number of reasons why you would support modding, but not just because of that. But again, they kind of go back and forth. I'm probably going to circle on back to that, but let's actually talk about some more simple ones before we get into the full breakdown here. Silicon Storm basically says no, he says how he says healthy, so no degenerate stuff. Lol. I do want to make a note that he did actually make a lot of the quote-unquote degenerate stuff in terms of like making the clothes and the outfits and things all kind of super nice and sexy and stuff. So, you know, it's just kind of a interesting factoid there. Also, a lot of those was worked on by his wife, if I remember correctly. So, Except here we have 6i says, dude already knows Eve's about to get violated, even if he tried to stop it, shrugging. It's already happening and sucks. Because the PC dorks are gonna make Stellar Blade ruin a fantastic game with perversity. I mean, dude, there's already art and stuff of this sort of happening, and it's the same thing of, like, what happened with, I don't know, like, Nier Automata or other stuff, where I don't know if there was ever, like, a huge modding scene in a lot of that stuff, because it was probably different, but it's kind of the same thing, where, you know, sex sells, as it were, you know? But saying that a small group of subset of people that would download and make these mods are going to then quote unquote ruin the game for people, just don't engage with that content, you know? Just don't. You click on the videos that you watch, you download the thing on your computer, you make those decisions and stuff. And I bet you, if we search this man's hard drives, we're gonna find some interesting R34 on there. Not some sort of like the PDF file type stuff, but, you know, some interesting and creative weird art stuff. But, you know, that's his thing. I'm not gonna say anything more on that. Moving on. Saying, Gertrude saying, any dev who is confident in their work doesn't need de nouveau. A game with de nouveau says more about them than this. This was another big thing that ended up happening here, and I'm just going to go over through these quickly, and I'm going to flash up a couple of these ones on the screen, where they were basically starting to ask, if he is so supportive of mods, why the hell is de nouveau here? And that is an interesting point that some people have made, and I do think that this is one of the reasons why the modding scene might take a little bit of time, because it will, like, you know, inevitably affect the mods because of how de nouveau is seen, not only by that, but also how it has affected the modding scene for one way or another. People like Urchin, people like people like Urchin also bring up the point of, like, it affects the modding scene, and a couple other ones I'll just, again, flash up on screen. Now, I'm not going to say that de nouveau being in the game is a good thing or a bad thing. It is a thing that happened, and it is annoying because of that reason. I do believe, though, that if they could, and if they did want to release this game normally, that they probably would have, just because of, like, the whole de nouveau coverage thing. And the reason I think that is because I think that the people involved there, unfortunately, did sign a contract, at least with Sony, on how they publish those types of games, and de nouveau might have been one of those things that needed to be involved in it for one reason or another, as a sort of anti-piracy measure, despite the fact that, again, de nouveau sucks and should be, like, a completely unvalued and destroyed thing. I did get into a little bit of a fight with someone about this on Twitter, where I basically just said, yeah, while yes, I said that de nouveau in and of itself is bad, and I do think that the company was burned, if we are stuck with it, I do think that, like, we should ask for de nouveau to improve a game rather than destroy a game. Where, again, the person's like, oh, it was about, like, this and that, and it's not about that. It's like, yes, absolutely, I agree. Like I said, I agree. If the game has de nouveau in it, fuck de nouveau. Full stop, de nouveau sucks. It's a lot of bad things and causes bad performances. We all know this. But, for me, if we are stuck with de nouveau, I just wish that de nouveau did better in terms of maybe not destroying or preventing piracy, because fuck that, but more of just doing better at, like, making the game better, as it were. I don't think that would ever happen in the history of fucking anything, but, you know, that's just how it is, apparently, but whatever. Next up here, we have Silang G saying, whose mod are more attractive? So what is the large dip in the human production that has led to the end of humanity? It seems it started in June 11th, 2025. I'm not even sure if is it June 12th that this thing is releasing? If that's the case, then this might be out by the time that the actual thing does it. It's very strange, and I do find it funny how people are like, oh yeah, let's just blame it on that. Mr. Jackhammered in a box basically talks about what about with having these on PS5? Because more we boycotting Sony than we will give up and allow our adult stuff to be uncensored because only adults playing this game to begin with. Lol. I mean, implementing mods on console is a thing that is hard to fucking do. I mean, Bethesda is probably the only one that I know of that has done it consistently. in terms of creating a modding scene on the platform of consoles. And even then, it's not perfect because, again, consoles are more or less a closed ecosystem. The reason why mods are very highly supported on a lot of this other stuff here, it's just really dumb. And then, like, to bring up one last thing here before we close out this video, Alucard brings up a weird point, saying he supports mods to make who's more attractive, yet he listens to Sony to censor the attractive holiday bunny outfit. Lol. Yeah, he's a hypocrite. Lol. He edited the outfit and made it less attractive than the original, then released the same outfit but less revealing. Lol. That's an entirely different fucking thing. Saying that, quote-unquote, he's a hypocrite for supporting mods when he censored an outfit. That's different. See, having the outfit edited to be quote-unquote less attractive is very different than, say, supporting a community of creative people that are trying to make the game better, or not, maybe not make the game better, because I shouldn't really use that language, but rather to make the game themselves. No, that's still bad wording because that's not true. How do I put this? Supporting a community of creative thinkers who you agree and like, and supporting their views on how they take your art and remix it for whatever reason is very different than listening to an upper manager or listening to a person who writes your checks in saying that I will dock your pay or you will not have a job unless you listen to me in one way, shape, or form. That's different, right? You can see the difference there. That's the difference. So yeah, overall, I think that'll about do it for this episode of I Ranted to this microphone for long enough about a game that's quite honestly is looking pretty good and a nice port, to be honest. But we'll have to see. If this is released on the same day, go out and play it, because it's going to be really funny. But I just thought that this was a really fun story to talk about, because, again, it has to do with Stellar Blade, and I haven't talked about Stellar Blade in a while, so put Celebrate at the title. Overall, yeah, that's really all that I have to say on this. If you like what it is that I do, want to support me in any other way, shape, or form, other than like and subscribe, which is always not, please hit that like and follow stuff. And all the links are in the description below. My name is GamePenguin21, and I'm looking to hit 1.5k subscribers by the end of the year. Hopefully, we can hit that milestone, and then I will do something very special for that. Maybe, maybe not. With all that being said, my name is GamePenguin21, and a peace off.
Hey man, can I get a favor? Yeah, sure, I know